Shonen are ridiculously hype. You watch Rock Lee go all out against Gaara, or Vegeta training like a madman, or All Might being All Might, and for about a week you are a completely different person. You want to be like them, you feel super motivated to do everything, be as cool and disciplined as they are, then the high wears off, and somehow you're back to exactly where you started. Shonen has been motivating people since the genre existed. You can't watch Goku or Vegeta train and not feel so fired up that you immediately want to head to the gym. One Piece, Hero Academia, Bleach, Demon Slayer, the list goes on and on. Even outside of shonen anime and films like the Creed series or your typical superhero films, there is no shortage of super hype last stands or underdogs giving it everything they've got. There's just something about them that's so captivating, even when you're watching that scene for the 10th time. It's so easy to put one on when you're feeling low, to get that little boost as you picture yourself as the character, envision yourself being as disciplined and relentless as they are, believing that you'll start to be as cool and hardworking as them. Blue Lock at its core is also a show about motivating people, but rather than a heroic last stand of someone pushing through broken bones or a power-up through sheer force of will, it goes a totally different approach. Both motivating, both with a similar underlying message, get better, get stronger, don't give up, but both of them took the idea in completely different directions. So what makes Blue Lock stand out as something so different amongst the sea of shonen anime, and which is actually better as such? Obviously, the idea of an underdog working his way up to the top is literally everywhere, whether through some life-changing sudden event or for a slow, painful grind to the top, where he outworks everyone around him, or both, of course. And it lands every single time, which is exactly why the genre keeps going back to the same idea, and we can't stop watching it. So let's actually look at a few of them, starting out with the most famous one in Goku, who trains under increased gravity until his body gives out, who genuinely loves pushing himself and challenging himself against stronger opponents. Beyond having the most iconic moment in anime, he has endless training montages and moments of inhuman willpower. He is the absolute epitome of working hard and never giving up, and to many, he's the greatest of them all. It's simple, but it's still so effective. You watch him and you feel his mindset being absorbed into you. Then we've got Naruto Uzumaki. This is a kid who gets written off by his entire village at a very, very young age. He fails his ninja exam 3 separate times, but he decides he's becoming Hokage anyway through pure stubbornness. There is an endless number of last stands from him, and even within the same series is perhaps the most beloved underdog of them all, Rock Lee. A boy in a world where people have fire, lightning, all the way up to meteors, Lee was born without any of those powers, relying on sheer grit and a relentless work ethic to up a legendary fight against someone gifted with a mini sand god using just straight hands. And it's very obvious why we love it. It's your classic case of, I'll never give up and I'll work as hard as I need to despite my lack of talent. It's so easy to relate to Lee's frustration of, what if I'm just never going to make it because I lack the talent I need? And it's just an awesome fight all around, unbelievably inspiring. I've watched like 100 times. Then you've got Hinata Shoya from Haikyuu, my all-time favorite story. A kid who is 5'4" in a sport where 6'3" is considered short. He is simply not built for volleyball and doesn't even have anyone to practice with for a team sport. The odds could not be any more stacked against him. He inevitably gets completely dismantled in his first official match, and yet still declares, through tears, that he will one day beat the genius who stood across the court from him. Practices at home with a wall, begging his schoolmates just to give him even one pass, doing anything and everything he can despite the completely inefficient and seemingly pointless nature of it. No wall is high enough to slow down this tiny ball of sunshine. Again, simple, effective. There's parts later on in the story where things do get infinitely more beautiful and layered than this, but I don't think it's unfair to say that a fair amount of Hinata's journey, especially early on in the series, is again, believe in yourself, work hard, one day you'll finally make it. And I'm sure at this point you can tell, Shonen loves its hard work montages. You know, it loves an underdog, it loves to watch them overcome the odds. These moments are genuinely incredible and making you feel something instantly. Nobody sits you down and explains the psychology of resilience or the mechanics of habit formation. You just watch someone refuse to stay down. You understand it, you absorb it into yourself, you think back to it when you need to, and it both reassures you you'll be fine and pumps you up without fail. But there's a lot of overlap here, right? A lot of these are coming from very similar ideas. And that is because a lot of this originates from what Weekly Shonen Jump has built its entire identity around for decades. The 3 words of the editorial mission statement are friendship, effort, and victory. These stories are generally aimed at a somewhat young audience who's supposed to walk away feeling like anyone could be the hero if they just try hard enough and lean on their friends. You know, it's just very inspiring to watch. And for that specific goal, it works incredibly well, right? The idea is not to hand you a psychological manual, it's to make you feel excited, you know, think they're awesome, and get you to tune in next week. And I'm not saying that needs to change by any means. In fact, I very much hope it doesn't. You know, they do what they're trying to do very well. I love my Shonen, and none of what I'm saying is criticizing the shows directly, because this obviously isn't the aim of them. You know, they're telling a story, and they maybe happen to inspire you as part of that. And of course, despite that not necessarily being the aim, for many people these kind of shows are what got them to turn their life around, right? I'm one of them. Trust me, I've watched that scene of Deku train on the beach with All Might basically every single day back when I was at university, right? So I do absolutely get it. But for the context of this channel and this video especially, as I have unfortunately come to realize as I get older, just hard work and a I'll never give up mindset does not solve everything. And the reasons why we struggle with things like discipline and self-doubt in the first place is actually often a lot deeper than we're just not pumped up enough, we're not motivated enough. And seeing Zoro do 500 push-ups or Vegeta yell as he goes Super Saiyan is awesome, but it doesn't really help explain why we can't seem to stick with anything, or why we don't think a genuine change is possible for us, or why we keep letting ourselves get distracted by our phones all day. And this is what Blue Lock does a little differently. Where most shonen builds its motivation around a big moment or a training montage, Blue Lock builds it around your actual psychology. Despite how it may look from some of the over-top panels looking in, there are no heroic last stands with bloody wounds and broken bones, no forms unlocked through sheer force of will, no life or death battles, because those things are never going to happen to us. And so it won't just tell you to keep going, it will tell you how to keep going and what to do. For instance, Seisho and Nagi, who initially seems like your classic lazy genius, you know, the naturally gifted kid who struggles to find much interest in anything, spending his days numb and drifting by, wondering how to get his fire for life and the sport back. But instead of being handed a moment that reignites the fire, you know, your classic shonen moment where everything suddenly changes, he instead has to come to terms with the idea that his boredom is actually entirely his own fault. He keeps taking the easy route and will eventually pay the price for it if his ways don't change. We see him trying different mindsets and approaches to get around this wall of burnout he's hit, searching for a way to get that spark back. And you see the difference here, right? One route would be, oh, here's this epic, relatable moment where everything changes that you can play 100 times over to flick a switch in your brain when you need it, and the other makes him, and by extension us as viewers, reflect on why that fire isn't there, why he feels bored, why he's not how he wants to be. It prompts us to think about ourselves and why we act the way we do. And it's worth taking a quick detour into Hollywood here, because there's been a shift away from these kinds of films there. For decades, the American version of this was basically its own genre. Rocky, Rudy, Miracle, Cinderella Man, Coach Carter, Creed. You know the whole formula before the movie even starts, right? someone that nobody believed in, a coach who does, a montage cut to a big triumphant score, then the fight, the speech, the freeze frame, the celebration, etc. And it worked. It was phenomenal. It's exactly why people still throw these on when they need a boost, the same reason we put on the United States of Smash scene again. Likewise, a superhero film, it still has that kind of similar message of, believe in yourself, put the work in, etc. But most of the runtime is spent on the end result and the big flashy fight where the hero wins, not the process of becoming someone who could win it. You might get a little training scene and a bit where they figure out how to use their powers, etc. But it's very much not the focus of the film. It's a very, very small part of it. The how shrinks down to almost nothing because really these films are about showing the wow, right? How cool they are, how competent they are, etc. And of course, they'll always have these scenes showing the lows and the sacrifices and them coming back from it. But it doesn't focus on it, it doesn't dwell on it because that kind of kills the fantasy. They don't want to spend too long showing Superman or Spider-Man stressing 24/7 about their identity being revealed, or the latter recovering from broken bones every time he fights a supervillain, because that's just not much fun. Compare that to something that gets 300 chapters or 4 seasons to actually sit with someone's plateau, their doubts, their first failed attempt, their second failed attempt, and that slow, glamorous climb back up. It's not really a fair fight. Long-form serialized storytelling has room that a 2-hour film just cannot compete with, and combine that with anime being more accessible to a Western audience than it's ever been, and of course an entire generation ends up getting their hard work actually pays off fix from a 100-episode story instead of a 2-hour one. And funnily enough, Blue Lock actually calls this out at one point, that often we see a movie, feel inspired by the movie's characters, and decide that we want to try living like that. We want to be as cool as they are. But in reality, we're only passively taking in the most convenient parts of it. You might see a superhero movie and think that they're so cool and powerful, and that might inspire you to want to be like that, but it doesn't make you think about what it takes to get there besides, oh, I need to work hard. Again, the emphasis is on the end result, not this full guidebook on the entire journey, which is why we've all been in that little cycle of seeing something cool, wanting to be like that, trying it for a few weeks, then being back to where we were. And it's just because it's so much more complicated than I need to work hard, I need to be motivated. Isagi Yoichi is a great example of this. By now, you'll have seen the tendency people have online to tear down those above them through insults or dismissing them as lucky or claiming their success doesn't count. You see this everywhere. Maybe it's even your initial reaction when you see someone who has what you want, right? You want a reason why it doesn't count. I used to be the same, and what made me realize I was doing this was watching Isagi. He instead fully acknowledges that the people above him are simply doing things that he isn't. He is even willing to learn from people who are outright obnoxious and awful towards him. Something that a lot of us, again myself included, would be very reluctant to do. To look at someone that you outright hate and accept that he's not better than you because you were born without something or he's got some unfair advantage, but simply that he's doing more than you, that you don't know everything and need to be willing to learn. Isagi's breakthroughs are never huge feats of sheer willpower and effort or one day all my hard work will pay off, but through uncomfortable psychological changes that can genuinely change the way you think. And the reason why I like this so much is it's far more proactive than most superhero films. It's all on what you can do rather than waiting for the one day you get this grand moment where everything changes. The superheroes getting their powers, etc. Because people feel inspired by this and end up just waiting for this grand event to change their lives instead of doing it themselves. Whereas Blue Lock is not only a kind of guidebook for the inevitable struggles and pitfalls you'd find along the way when you pursue anything at all, but also crucially, very willing to explore the flip side of everything it puts forward through characters like Mark Snuffy, who puts forward the question of what would you do if you just never managed to accomplish anything grand in your life? Could you still live the remainder of your life that way? Are you simply expecting yourself to succeed so that when you do it feels like nothing because you expected to, and when you don't, it's the end of the world because, again, you expected to. It's not that these are the most grand ideas of all time, right? It's more that it's presented in such a way that not only feels so applicable to you, as though calling you out on something important that you needed to think about, but you also see the same idea applying to so many different characters from so many different angles that it really lets you reflect deeply on how it applies to you. So, now that we've seen the actual difference, does Blue Lock really motivate people better? Well, if you want a fast, universal hit of pure inspiration to get you hyped up for something important, or just want something that makes you keep pushing another day instead of quitting, most shonen does this better than anything else out there. If you want motivation that survives contact with your life, something that you can use weeks, months, years later after the hype has worn off, and really makes you think about what you're doing, what you want, I genuinely think Blue Lock does something that most shonen just doesn't really do. It is, of course, not that shonen never has other messages. Absolutely, that is not what I'm saying. Rather, that Blue Lock is so full to the brim of them, and just lets you see everything from so many different angles, which lets it really rewire your brain rather than just hyping you up for a bit. So the next time you catch yourself rewatching that same scene for the 100th time, ask yourself what you're actually chasing. Are you chasing the feeling of being hyped up, or are you chasing an actual answer? Because obviously there is nothing wrong with either, but if you've watched every hype scene there is and still can't figure out why you keep quitting things 2 weeks in, maybe it's worth giving the other kind a go.